Hello, my little bubblegum dogs. This is Movies, Music, and Moods. I'm Noey, and this is a podcast journal for me to talk about what I find magic and mystifying and memeable about the movies I watch and the music I listen to. So, let's get started. We have a really fun pair this episode for episode 11. The album is Loss of Life by MGMT, and the movie is E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Ever heard of it? Yeah. So let's get started with Loss of Life by MGMT. And this album just came out a couple weeks ago. It came out on February 23rd, 2024. And I've really been looking forward to it since the singles came out, particularly Bubblegum Dog and Nothing to Declare, which obviously I'll get into. And I just want to address my kind of controversial history with MGMT. I haven't historically been a big fan of theirs. So the first time I heard anything from their album Oracular Spectacular, I had just started college, I had just started art school, and I think I had just declared all hipster trends as soulless and worthy of disdain. I was going through it, folks, okay? And to this day, the video to Electric Feel strikes within me a sour expression. It reminds me a lot of Fern Gully. And Fern Gully strikes within me a sour expression. Sorry, everyone. All that tribal appropriation that all the, quote-unquote cool artsy kids were into back then. And I mean, Electric Feel is a jam. Absolutely. The video's just not for me. And I'm still not a fan of kids, but I would like some credit because I did really like Neon Indian when they first came out. So I get credit for that, right? But I always just feel like I've never truly been like the precise audience for MGMT because I've never hung out at a music festival. Music festivals to me seem like hell, and I've never dropped acid in the forest. So I guess I just kind of had like a weird chip on my shoulder about them that I have since brushed off because I really liked Little Dark Age, the album, and the title track, Little Dark Age, and the video to Little Dark Age. Love it. It just had that goth attitude that I really needed at the time back in 2018. And I also really needed to go back to therapy. So I say all this to say that I just haven't been following them throughout their entire musical journey. I've just been kind of a casual visitor, And from what I can tell, they really like to tell stories. They don't mind getting a bit weird or being funny. And they like to make note of their inspiration from writers, artists, and other musicians, which I really like. So MGMT is at its core Ben Goldwasser and Andrew Van Weingarten. And one day, I will fully be able to remember which one is which. I'm so sorry. I actually think I know now after watching the Bubblegum Dog video. I promise. Really, after doing like a mini deep dive, so like a medium dive on them, I can see how they would be like the illustration majors of the pop rock world. The full album Loss of Life definitely explores themes of loss and grieving, and I'll definitely be touching on some of that as I run through the album. Now, what did I find magic about Loss of Life? I would certainly say the first track, which is Loss of Life 2. There was a single, Loss of Life. It's the final track. So I guess you can listen to the final track and then start the album over again to listen to the part 2. But Loss of Life is being narrated by a character called Taliesin. So Taliesin was a poet and a bard in the 6th century, and many of his poems are supposedly collected in the Book of Taliesin. And they are some of the oldest poems in Welsh. How cool is that? And already, this is what I would call a literature class album. Deep Purple obviously also thought that Taliesin was interesting, considering their album, The Book of Taliesin. Although reading a bit about that, it seems like maybe the Money Go Round just wanted to market it to the US hippie audience. Go figure. The song itself is a poem being read set to music. It sounds to me like an ice cream truck medieval keyboard. I love the poet's voice moving in and out of each ear. And this song really sets the tone for a mystical, fantastic album. It's very fantasy prog. So the next song is Mother Nature. And I think this song features a harmonica, and I usually don't like harmonica, but if that's what I'm hearing, I do really like it in this one. It's breezy. It has some 90s rock vibes to it. There's a fairly grungy bridge. And again, we get fantasy elements. We get mentions of a castle and a temple bell. And the word fantasy also. I just want to make sure I state that. It seems to me like the story of someone starting over, and telling someone else that they have to do the same. I love the line, "I understand it's not your nature." And I also really love, "You know what comes right after the dark, but I understand your hesitation." I think this track is comforting and optimistic, and a lot of the album is not as comforting or optimistic, for sure. And it also kind of reminds me of the Smashing Pumpkins in parts. This is a great one and definitely one that I would keep listening to. The next Magic song is Nothing to Declare. It's like this beautiful, folksy song. The video is really fun. It features Inga Petrie. She is a young woman who is a college student. She has a limb difference. She was born without arms. And she's great in the video. She travels abroad. She's living it up. And right at the end of the video, she stands in front of the Venus de Milo. And the viewer has that moment where we see the similarity between the two and maybe feel like Inga sees herself in the Venus de Milo in a way that maybe she hasn't seen herself in other statues or forms of art before. Nothing to Declare to me, at face value, it's like, declaring what you're taking to another country through customs. But I definitely feel it's more like, I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to prove myself. The world is really all mine, regardless of what you think, and I don't need an explanation for that. The vocals in this are really beautiful, and there's something fairly important that I want to bring up here. Inga is fighting breast cancer right now, and she has a GoFundMe that's been set up for her to help with her funds and her cost of living. So if you're listening to this, please check it out and donate if you're able to. So the next track that I felt was magic is Nothing Changes. So we go from Nothing to Declare to Nothing Changes. And the subject of this one kind of reminded me of Montreal's song, The Repudiated Immortals, and also someone experiencing depression and anxiety. There's this really cool instrumental break that sounds like Muzak playing in limbo or something, while this person kind of just moans on and on. It's really dreamlike in places, and then the bridge comes in with this more triumphant sounding note, and we get another reference to Sisyphus. I've mentioned Sisyphus before, and I'm only 11 episodes in, but the character mentions pushing the boulder off to the side. And that reminded me of the description of making new neural pathways that my therapist has told me about. If anyone's counting, I think that's at least my second reference to therapy at this point. But this album brought that up for me a lot. So maybe it's not always a bad thing for things not to change. I know I'm analyzing this album quite a bit, but they're the ones who started with poetry. Okay. And then the final magic track is the last song on the album, which is Loss of Life. And to me, it feels like a little carnival song. And in this album, we hear Nothing Prepares You, Nothing to Declare, Nothing Changes. That speaks to a feeling of emptiness. And I like the line about the painting. If we are to take it literally, if anyone else has painted well into the late night, you're hoping that the painting looks like something the next day, but the state of mind you're in at night usually doesn't match the state of mind you're in the next day. So I like that line. I love the lyrics to this. I like the motif. There are these really satisfying watery sounds. And to me, the message of the song is that, life is painful and sad, and it can be really tragic, but there's still a lot of beauty to experience. So what did I think was mystifying? There are a couple tracks here, and the first one is Dancing in Babylon. I feel like a lot of other people are really excited about this one. I'm sorry. I think it's supposed to be touching, and it's actually the only MGMT song with a guest. It features Christine and the Queens. but it just kind of sounds like the song at the end of a 90s Disney movie to me. It's really sugary and saccharine. And I'm not saying that you couldn't be really touched by this song. You know, it's tackling what sounds like love despite loss. There's a mention to war and tanks, but I have a really hard time with this one. On a re-listen, I like to just skip it. It just doesn't work for me. I kind of have a hard time taking it seriously. And yeah, the line, proud-hearted like fish in the lobby, I do only think of Michael Scott and the koi fish. So, sorry about that. The next song is another one that I think is heartfelt and meaningful, but ultimately is just not my favorite, and that one is People in the Streets. Now, I moved this from magic to mystifying. After listen and listen, I found it becoming more grating to me. And I do like the vocals. They're kind of a bit of Bowie, Brian Ferry, Iggy Pop, and someone else that I just can't figure out, so please feel free to let me know. And it is a song about protesters. I really like the bass in this one. I love when the drums come in, and I love the vocals. It sounds like the character is admitting to their privilege and not being comfortable with the oppressed, maybe because of that. Like, they have a hard time fully engaging and joining the people in the streets because of that. That's my analysis. And I do wish I knew what the crowd at the end is saying, but ultimately, I'm just not getting this one as much. So I had to put it into mystifying. So what song did I think was memeable? What song did I think was iconic? Definitely I'm going to go for I Wish I Was Joking. This one is another sort of low energy song. And I like the lyrics. I think they're sad and funny, which makes sense. The song is called I Wish I Was Joking. I really like the mundane references to a $6 coffee, municipal parking, and Disney on Ice. I like songs about mundane things. There's this really powerful verse. Here's the thing about drugs. They'll sink your mind and steal your friends. I think you're probably supposed to interpret that as when you do drugs, your friends leave you. I interpreted it also as they leave you when they do drugs. I think both work. And I really liked the reference to the Steve Miller Band Joker here with the Gangster of Love line. Because it's like, does he even speak of the pompatus of love? So that's what I thought was memeable. But what's most likely to get stuck in your head? And I'm going to give that award to Bubblegum Dog. Yeah, I absolutely love this song. When it came out, I couldn't stop listening to it. I can't remember if I've already mentioned it on the podcast, but it's been a regular listen for me since it came out. It's so good. It's so T-Rex. MGMT really seems to evoke Mark Bolan quite a bit, in my opinion. And what is the Bubblegum Dog? Is the Bubblegum Dog some kind of, like, musical direction expectation that the band has? Is it student loans? Because for me, my Bubblegum Dog is student loans. The song paints this picture of this bleak, vapid reality. You know, it's kind of grim. And again, the instrumental break is so T-Rex. Everyone, I'm begging you, go listen to T-Rex right now. But my favorite lyrics are in the chorus, and they are, I felt hate toward the earthly world, but hate is a very strong word, and it's finally catching up with me. Love it. Also, check out the video. It's so much fun. Absolutely love it. I want a whole album of just songs like this. And our special award this episode is Song Most Likely to Be the Song You Sing to Your Spooky Little Monster Daughter, and that award goes to Frady's song. So Andrew Van Weingarten's daughter's name is Frady, and she was named after a past relative of his who was an opera singer. Her name was Frady. I love the wind chime sounds in this one. I like that it kind of sounds like it's in, like, I don't know, a haunted forest. And I mean, if you've seen literally any MGMT video, a haunted forest tracks. It tracks. I love the slow acoustic guitar. The female background vocals are really excellent. And it's really glitchy. And towards the end, the song kind of turns into like a glittery swirl. So that's Loss of Life by MGMT. And overall, I think it's a damn good album. You know, like I said, I haven't been following them as close as a lot of their fans over the years, but I can say that this album is just It's just an interesting piece of art. I will always defend an artist's need and their right to follow the direction they want to go in instead of doing the same thing over and over again. Is this album sad? Yeah, sure. But they warned us, didn't they? Because it's called Loss of Life. So let's move on to the movie. And I am so excited about this episode's movie, which is E.T. It's from 1982. You know, it's like not a very well-known movie. It was actually directed and co-produced by this guy named Steven Spielberg. I assume he's just like some penniless, no-name guy. Just kidding. But I'm so excited to talk about E.T. I'm probably going to pee myself. I had never seen E.T. I think a lot of us just figure, I get it, you know, he's in the bike basket and he's flying up there and they touch fingers and he says, E.T. phone home or something like that. And that's enough. Like, I don't need to see it. I've seen other Spielberg movies. I saw The Terminal. So it's like, what's the point, right? No, you're wrong. You haven't seen E.T. And there are people out there who haven't, because I hadn't. Please go watch E.T. Oh my God. And if you have a heart, you just might enjoy it. So E.T. Okay, we've got Drew Barrymore as Gertie. Yes, her name is Gertie. I don't know why. I don't know why in the late 70s her mother named her Gertrude. Speaking of moms, E.T. also stars Dee Wallace as Mary. We've got Robert McNaughton as Michael, the older brother, who I didn't know existed. And we have Henry Thomas as Elliot. Ponyboy from The Outsiders is also in it, or as he would prefer to be known, C. Thomas Howell. E.T. himself is uncreditedly voiced by Pat Welsh, and E.T. himself is mostly an animatronic puppet, but if you watch the movie, you can tell that there are sometimes people inside of him, which included Tamara Detrow, Pat Bylan, and Matthew Demerit. And we also have Peter Coyote as Keys. So like I said, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial was directed by Steven Spielberg, co-produced by Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy, and notably, the cinematography was done by Alan Davio. Written by Melissa Matheson. I'm definitely a science fiction fan. I love alien iconography. I have oftentimes identified with aliens, but I still had never seen it. Also, E.T. just didn't look cute to me. I'll get to that. My predictions going into the movie were that it was going to scare me, stress me out, and gross me out. I guess Steven Spielberg took inspiration from the imaginary friend he had after his parents got divorced. Divorce is part of the plot. Elliot and the kid's mom had recently, we're told, gotten a divorce from their dad, who is famously in Mexico with Sally. So let's just get on to the magic part, shall we? And there is a lot of magic here in E.T. I know, it's such a surprise. Right off the bat, the opening score, spooky, mysterious. John Williams does it again. I think the score and the cinematography are my two favorite parts of the movie. I love the design of the spaceship. There are like windows or vents that are lit up that kind of seem like there's a sheet moving in them. Like there's movement with those. I don't know how to explain it. There's kind of this like diaphanous quality to them. I watched E.T. twice. I watched it by myself and then I watched it with my family. And right at the very beginning, when you can only see E.T.'s fingers curiously touching the little tree or the plant, my sister was like, yeah, I'm already emotionally connected to E.T. I already find him cute and sweet. And you're just already worried about him. I think that's why I said the movie was going to stress me out, because you expect that in a movie about aliens, there's going to be some government entity that's tracking them down, you know, so they can study them. And yeah, I immediately liked E.T. and didn't want that to happen to him. But that's the plot, right? Something bad has to happen to the protagonist, or else it's just a story about a cute little alien. I guess I'm not sure why we can't have that. The sounds E.T. makes are really crazy. His screaming, I can see unsettling a lot of kids. It does sound like a sheep bleeding, and it might have been. I think on the Wikipedia page, it said that they used various animals, like in addition to the speaking parts, to make E.T.'s voice. I really thought the family was so sweet and loving right away. I think that the shots of them at the dinner table, even the shots of the dog sleeping in the bed, there's something so comforting and warm about it. I know a lot of people talk about Spielberg's movies being like schmaltzy and nostalgic. I think it's okay to make something heartwarming and sweet. Everything doesn't have to be miserable and terrifying. And also, E.T. has a lot of frightening and unsettling elements. So let's just let these people live their lives in the meantime. And seeing them as such a tight-knit human family helps so much with the rest of the plot because you genuinely care that these awful things are happening to them. But I love the family's dynamic. I thought that was just a huge part of what makes the movie magic. And of course, the casting for the kids and for Mary. Dee Wallace's performance is wonderful. She can be a little ditzy at times, and everyone in the movie is going to have to go to therapy. I think the kids just see way too much stuff in general. But there's no guidebook for parenting, and there's definitely no guidebook for parenting when your youngest son befriends an alien. And E.T. is so much cuter than I thought he would be just from looking at him. Of course, his skin still has that weird, like, wet breakfast sausage look. I'm so sorry that I said that, but it's true. The scene in Elliot's bedroom where you realize that they're connected when he's slow blinking just reminds me of a cat. But I mean, I think a lot of cute things are cat-like because I find cats very cute. One thing I kind of noticed and liked is that the older brother, Michael, yes, he absolutely has like oldest child syndrome, and I feel for him there, but he's so well-rounded. He clearly likes music. He's like singing in the kitchen. He plays D&D. He plays video games. It looks like he's playing football. I mean, he's like an incredible, mountain biker. This kid can do it all, and he's basically in charge of managing his mother's emotions. That's kind of the job I wish he didn't have, but hey, life is trauma, you know? The house, beautiful. The sets, beautiful. Elliot's gigantic room, love it. I love the rainbow blinds. You really don't see those anymore. Elliot, a small child, has an Elvis Costello poster. And we've talked about Elvis Costello here on this podcast. Someone talked to me about the Elvis Costello poster. I want to know more. Was that maybe that's someone his dad likes? And so he also likes Elvis Costello? I don't know. That's kind of cute. E.T. throughout the movie is wearing all manners of, like blankets and shrouds. He's always covering himself up. I don't know if it's just too cold for him in the San Fernando Valley. I'm not sure. I know when they showed inside of his spaceship, it looked really humid and they were growing all those plants with all that steam. Oh, I'm obsessed with the steam and the fog and the smoke in this movie. And maybe that was just to help cover up some things, but obviously it's also a stylistic choice. It adds a sense of mystery and environmental depth to the movie. And I did really like the decision to only show adults from the waist down. I didn't notice that until I read about it. So you only hear Peter Coyote's Keys, which is his character's name, but you know danger is nearby when you hear all the beeping. You see that, just their legs and their silhouettes in the dark. You hear those keys jingling. And because we're only seeing adults from the waist down, it really centers the kids' stories in the movie. Obviously, of course, the exception is Dee Wallace's character. She's right there in the thick of it with the kids for most of the movie. E.T. saying ouch absolutely grabbed at my heartstrings and just ripped them apart. The Star Wars references, I didn't like them at first, but if you think about it, those kids would be so deep into Star Wars obsessions. By that point, it was such a huge thing, so I get it. That Yoda mask had to have been real. Like that, when they were trick-or-treating, the trick-or-treater you see with the Yoda mask, that was like the most pro costume ever. I was constantly jealous of not only the kids just being outside all the time, but also the idea of being out on a dark, breezy night and looking up at the stars. Like, that's what I want for my life. I don't want to deal with the whole E.T.'s got to go back home problem. I'd rather just enjoy the breezy stars. You get it. Another magic thing for me, and I guess this is more of like a morbid thought, Elliot's awareness that E.T. was in real danger, that if he was caught by some like government entity, that they were going to take him to study and that they were going to cut him up. I mean, it's upsetting for him to know that, but I liked that Elliot, the whole movie, was aware that those were the stakes. Like if, obviously Elliot was really conflicted because he wanted E.T. to just stay with him because he's like a brother to him. But him knowing that made the movie even more powerful to me personally. Because I kept thinking about that. Like, listen, if they get a hold of this little guy, it's not going to end well, And I mean, if an alien in real life, like if an extraterrestrial in real life has ever seen any of our media about aliens, they would be way too offended to even visit here. I'm sorry to say that to all of the people who have been abducted according to Unsolved Mysteries, okay? The big chase scene towards the end with the bikes, I usually zone out during action sequences, and I did a little bit here, but I was genuinely interested. I was also really impressed that all of the kids were such incredible athletes, and maybe that does take you a bit out of the movie, but I liked it. And again, the kids are at the forefront here. This is a problem for the kids to solve when they all band together to help Elliot and E.T. and Michael. I thought E.T.'s brethren, I'm going to call them, or like his shipmates, his species, their glowing hearts were really, really cool. I really liked how that effect was done. I was reading that it signifies that they're such an empathic race of extraterrestrials. I love the scene of E.T. emerging from the back of the van with the white blanket that Elliot gave him over him with his heart glowing. It felt very Christ-like. I'm not trying to upset anyone with that statement, but it did. They were all looking at him in wonder, like he's been resurrected. Honestly, I just felt like the whole movie was magic. From the score, the lighting, the sets, the characters, the writing, the family dynamic, the way you feel this instant connection to E.T. It's so powerful. I completely understand why it's a classic. And with that being said, I'm going to move on to what I thought was mystifying, because there was a lot of mystifying things about this movie. But usually when there's a movie I really like, I enjoy the mystifying stuff. I think it adds character. First and foremost, I noticed that the rating was PG-13 and up. It said sexual content. That terrified me, quite frankly. But after watching the movie a couple of times, I'm pretty sure it's just because Elliot calls his brother penis breath. And it's cute that the mom kind of laughs, like she's surprised, but laughs after that. Because it's funny when like a kid swears, I think we can all agree. And even without the penis breath line, the movie couldn't possibly be PG. It's just, it's made too many kids piss their pants in the movie theaters. And like any movie where something frightening is going on and no one's believing the person who first witnessed it, if my kid came into my kitchen and told me like there's something outside, there's something in the shed, the extremely well-lit shed, by the way, with no door, near the cornfield, I would be so frightened. And I'm glad that they eventually that night all went out to check on it, because I absolutely would not be able to relax if my kid had said that to me. Do I think E.T. could have been designed a little cuter and less breakfast sausagey? Yeah, I do. But I mean, we're in the age of Baby Yoda. We're in the age of Grogu. So our perspectives are probably a little skewed when it comes to cute aliens. It took me an entire rewatch to realize that Elliot's closet was so gigantic because it connected to Gertie's closet. It's still a gigantic closet. I'm desperate for that kind of closet space. And that leads me to my next point. The house is gigantic, and the house at night is completely different from the house during the daytime. I did not realize they were in the San Fernando Valley at first, and I don't really know much about that valley and the geography of that, so my apologies. But at the beginning of the movie, we're seeing this forest with this, like, seemingly humid forest floor filled with ferns. And then when Elliot checks up on the noise in the shed, there's a cornfield behind the house. And that shot with the shed lit up on the right, the cornfield in the back, the house off to the left, and that moon up there at the top. That shot is so beautiful. So you have a completely different idea of where the hell this place is. And then it looks like they've almost moved to the desert in that shot where you see the brother reversing the car down their gigantic driveway. And you see there's all this mountainous area. And there are these sort of arid-looking mountains behind the house. So where's the cornfield? Where are these ferns? We know that to get to that forest area, the kids have to ride their bikes out of the suburbs. So I'm fine with that. That totally makes sense to me. But I think the cornfields only appearing at night is a huge and confusing miss. I think it's one of the things that I honestly can't believe was missed in the way it was in the movie. Okay, yeah, we have to suspend a lot of disbelief because there's an alien, but there are also a lot of realistic things happening, like adults not believing kids, and groups of like law enforcement or scientists tapping people's houses and putting up containment shelters in houses. Because I thought all of that part seemed extremely likely. Yeah, if this happened to us, this is how it would go down. Upon the discovery of this little alien, the neighborhood is not throwing a parade. Someone is actively trying to find him and study him. And they're also really terrified of the biological consequences of ET being on the planet, which I hadn't even thought about. So the fact that we're supposed to believe a cornfield is behind this house when we see it in the daytime makes absolutely no sense. Now, I will say, again, the house was probably a bit too big for Dee Wallace and the 3 kids when she's complaining about grocery prices, which, oh my God, same. I'm thinking, downsizing would probably help out a little bit. But then, she might have to move her kids out of the neighborhood and change schools. That's just too much. That's too much change after a divorce, So mystifying. I guess only blonde girls and women are allowed in this movie. Even the really tall girl in the frog scene is blonde. I wasn't so sure about the frog scene at first, and now I absolutely love it. I love that it's mirroring what E.T. is watching on TV, so I'm kind of going back to magic for this part. I love that at the end when all the kids are releasing the frogs, there's no sound, like there's no dialogue, you're just hearing the score. And the little girl with the braids holding the frogs, I was 90% positive that was a Norman Rockwell painting. It's not. It definitely reminds me of the one of the little girl with a black eye sitting outside of the principal's office. And also, those children are so young to be dissecting frogs. That wasn't something for me that was even talked about until high school. Those kids are not, in my opinion, unless that's like a gifted class, those kids are not going to understand why they're dissecting that frog. I feel like I would not have even made the connections between what I'm doing to this poor little amphibian versus what it means for understanding basic biology. Probably would have made more sense for Michael to be doing in his class, but that just wouldn't have worked for the plot because Elliot had to be drunk for that scene. And you guessed it, did I enjoy the kids kissing scene? No, but I got over it. I was mystified by the kids going trick-or-treating by themselves, and then, of course, the mom being terrified when Elliot doesn't come home. It's like, yes, I mean, that's like one awful consequence of sending your kids out into the neighborhood by themselves. And obviously, from the look of that Halloween, it was totally normal for kids to do that without their parents. From the way I've noticed a lot of Gen Xers talk about their childhood, there wasn't a lot of chaperoning, but the mom was free to come with them. She was just wearing her really weird cat costume at home, like a cat with a wig and a wand. What was she? A cheetah godmother. A cheetah fairy godmother. A cheetah girl fairy godmother. So her being all like pissed off and stressed about that was frustrating to me, considering you sent your 3 children out by themselves into the night to literally ask for candy from strangers on their doorstep. So mystifying again, what was up with the spaceman scene? I do not understand it. I felt it must have been a dream at first, or was E.T. hallucinating it? It was absolutely gut-wrenching when he was on the bathroom floor, all dehydrated and stuff. Oh my God, I haven't even talked about this. Him in the ditch with the raccoon next to him. How's a kid supposed to see that and then just go on like living? This is not a kid's movie, okay? But him on the bathroom floor when the space people, like the people in the astronaut suits, come into the bathroom and he reaches up at them saying home? Like, was that to try to lure him in some way? Because he didn't need luring. He needed someone to, like, hold him and tell him things were going to be okay and then send him home. Oh my God. And what I found equally mystifying, as much as the cornfield in the backyard, is the fact that the mom is just letting the kids witness E.T. dying and witness them packing him up into that ice case. Like, what was that, dry ice or something? I think Gertie, like tiny Drew Barrymore, was watching them use the defibrillator on E.T. I know it was their house, but I would have told them, like, please don't be here. With the exception of Elliot, at this point, like, he needs to see what happens with E.T. So I could understand maybe leaving him there, but I still would have been holding my son the whole time and, you know, shielding his eyes from some of these things. I'm also very confused about Key's statement to Elliot about how that's what he would have wanted. It's like what he wanted since he was 10 and E.T. came to him first. What does that mean? So did E.T.'s ship land when Keyes was a kid and he met him first? Or did he mean that he made contact with E.T.'s people in the past when he was a kid? If you're just yelling at me right now because you know exactly what that statement meant, please leave me a comment on Instagram. Please explain it to me. So on my very first watching, I viewed what was happening to E.T. as just becoming more and more horrifying. And I feel like everyone was having their kids see this movie when it came out, and it's always been considered like a kid's movie. No. I feel like I can only just now handle this in my 30s. I would have remembered so much about this movie in a negative way if I had seen it as a kid, and then I probably never would have wanted to see it again. Admittedly, though, I'm a really sensitive person, and along with the mystifying section here, obviously I thought the kids flying scene was a little iffy. I think people look stupid when they're flying, but I'm sure it wowed a lot of people. And it was a relief, of course, that they could just get away from all of the scary adults in the cars. So that's enough for mystifying. What did I think was memeable? First and foremost, no douchebag talk in the house. Absolutely love that. I think I'm going to start saying that. Drew Barrymore calling her mom Mary. Drew Barrymore was insane levels of cute in this movie. And Michael also calls her Mary, too. It's like the kids, once E.T. comes, the kids have become businesslike. You know, you're not mom anymore, you're Mary. Like, we have more important things to deal with right now. We are taking care of a precious little alien brother in our house. Memeable. It was so adorable watching E.T.'s, I'm going to call it gender euphoria, when he was dressed up in the kind of like, you know, ladies wear with the hat and the wig. You know, up until that point, we've never seen him move with such energy. That outfit that Gertie gave him was transformative, and then we never see that happen again. When little Drew Barrymore said she taught him how to talk, I think she was like scratching her nose, so freaking cute. The mom looking at this dried up little desiccated alien on her bathroom floor, and she just says, "That's terrible." What a weird line. When the house is covered in all that containment stuff, and there are all those vans and cars in front of the driveway, and the kids on their bikes are looking at it, and the one kid says, "Something's happening." You're right, kid. Obviously, some other memeable lines. "I don't know streets. Mom always drives me. Can't he just beam up? This is reality, Greg." And Michael saying that he'd never driven forward before. Loved that. The driveway scene made more sense after that. So that's memeable. I already said I absolutely loved this movie. I cannot believe I waited so long to see it, and I'm so glad now that I have seen it. So I hope that my observations entertained you, and if you haven't seen the movie, please go see it and see if any of my observations even made sense to you. Maybe you feel a completely different way about it. So that's E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, from 1982. My question for this week is, did you have an imaginary friend when you were a kid? And what were they like? As a kid, I had a very rich inner sort of fantasy life, so I didn't really have an imaginary friend, but I was extremely desperate to be a witch a la Harry Potter. No imaginary friend, but as I understand it, it's fairly common. So let me know on Instagram. I'm at Movies, Music, and Moods. Let me know about your imaginary friend. And also, please let me know what you're watching, what you're listening to, and how you're feeling. As far as the moods part of Movies, Music, and Moods goes, when I first recorded the MGMT portion of this episode, I was feeling, quote, scrambled like an egg. I'm no longer feeling scrambled like an egg. I feel like someone put me back together again. And right now, I think I'm feeling hopeful. I'm thinking about reorganizing my office and moving some of the furniture around for the first time in pretty much 7 years. And I think it could result in some positive changes for me. So that's Movies, Music, and Moods. If you made it this far, I want to tell you that I really appreciate you and I'm grateful for you. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend or anyone you think would enjoy it. If you didn't like it, send it to someone you don't like as punishment. So thank you so much for being a listener, and we'll talk soon.